And you can see, you know, I got a nice wide pan there because you drop down one side, a nice wide catching pan. You should drop down one side of the transmission pan. You let it drain. You can see the fluids, not that red. So it's brownish, so it needs to be changed. That's why I'm changing it. Actually, I didn't strip out these bolts. I never liked this when I saw this. I was going to fix them with steel inserts. This one is a longer bolt too. One of the bolts was missing down there on that side, but it never leaked. Never leaked. The last time I changed this was years ago. 85,000 miles, didn't leak a drop, so I'm going to go with RTV again. But when you clean it with the RTV, make sure you chemically clean it, and you make sure it stops dripping completely, because it'll, you know, if you get any oil contamination in there where the RTV is, it's not going to seal up that good. So you might want to let it drip for a couple hours with the pan off before and then you chemically clean it, then put the RTV on it, put the pan up on it. But like I said, I'm going to put the gasket on it, you know, change the filter, put the gasket on it, and then fill it up the pan, start the car up, put it in gear, put it in reverse, let the transmission get that new fluid up in the torque converter, up in the oil cooler, and then I'm going to drain the pan again. This way I'll get most of the fluid out of it and be changed, just instead of just getting the pan all out, you know. And it's also not dangerous because I'm only using the transmission pressure to flow the new fluid around into the torque converter. I'm not using a flush system, which can loosen up something. You don't want to be doing that shit. That's some of these trans shops use that flush system, and it can knock some dirt out of there and then get up in your transmission. You don't want to do that. You can see I did my tire changer. It's all finished up. I put a couple of Confederate flags on there too. Clear coat. Recondition that sucker. It's like brand, it's better than new. It looks nice. It's real solid too. About 4 inches of wood on the bottom there. Yeah, you can see the pan is like super clean. That's what you want to do. You want to get it very, very clean. There's a little magnet in the corner, and the filter just sits up in there. It's just like pressed in place. It's got a little grommet on it. I'll show you what it is. But you want to make sure the pan is very clean and the gasket surface is very clean, because it'll leak otherwise. And I'm going to get that extra bolt, the one bolt that was missing. If I get one that's maybe a little bit longer, 3/8 of an inch longer, there's enough threads that it'll grab onto. So I'm going to go down to Lowe's and get one tomorrow. But it's in good shape. Okay, so I put this rubber gasket on there, and tell you the truth, I don't like the rubber gaskets. I like the old cork ones better. But that's just me. You don't ever want to use RTV with a rubber gasket. You either use RTV only or use the rubber gasket, but I like the RTV better. But you got to make sure it's really chemically clean when you put the RTV on. When I put this rubber gasket on, I use a little bit of nylon string, tied it in there, some of the holes, so this way it stays in place. But I'm only going to temporarily use it for just, you know, putting some oil in the pan, putting it in gear, putting it in reverse, and I'm going to drop the pan and throw away the gasket. And we're going to clean it all up again and put RTV on it. This is the filter. The filter sits up in a trans. Got to make sure the gasket's on there, the little O-ring. See that little orange O-ring? Don't leave that out. There's a couple lineup pins that it goes into, and it just presses into place. And you see these little nubs on the bottom there? They just go up. I don't know which way it goes, but it only goes one way. You know, when it goes into these little nubs, that just goes rest up against the bottom of the pan. So you don't bolt it in there. It's just the pan holds it up into place, and that's where the oil goes in. That's just how it is. It's got enough room with those, you know, that little raised nubs, that the oil can flow into that hole, get through the filter, and come out there. So and you got your magnet. So there you can see that big hole there is the where that goes. And yeah, you know, these two things right here. There's one right here. There's the other one right here. So this just goes right up in there. And wipe it off a little bit. These things get dirty like that, man. It's weird. Oh, that's the old one. That's why it's dirty. Here's the new one right here. So it just pushes up in place. Okay, so that's snapped up in place. Just, you know, when you pop it in there, it stays there and it's not going to fall down. So, and then the pan rests up against it and holds it in there a little more, I guess. It's not going to come out. So I'll put the pan on there with the gasket, put some oil in it, put it down in the ground, put it in drive, put it in reverse, and I'll drop the pan again and drain the oil. Yeah, that's the part number for it's a TF88 Hastings filter. Use ATF4. It's AT4 transmission fluid. It's a synthetic fluid just for Chryslers. And it took about 4 quarts just doing the pan. So if you're doing it twice, you're going to have to do 8 quarts. Maybe you want to get 9 quarts just to be on the safe side. Because when you drop the pan, you're going to take out 4 quarts. I put it in drive. I put it in reverse. You know, back and forth a few times. Make sure the fluid got mixed up into the torque converter. I'm going to drop the pan again. And I know it doesn't get all the fluid out, but it gets a lot more of the fluid out. So, and it's not pushing a lot of, you're not forcing the fluid through there with a flush where you can knock something loose. You know, you're just using the pressure of the transmission. So it's a safe way of doing it. And I don't know, that transmission's been there a long time, so it's still freaking going. I'm going to have to get a couple bolts for it tomorrow, though. A little bit longer, so they thread in there. I'm going to make sure it has all the bolts in there. You can see, I pulled the pan off again. The fluid's draining out, and it looks redder, but it's still not, well, it's pretty clean. But, you know, when I put the other 4 quarts in, it's like I said, it's not a perfect solution. You're not getting all the fluid changed, but you're still getting a lot more that's in the torque converter and the oil cooler. Tomorrow, I'm going to get a couple bolts that are just a little bit longer, and it'll be able to, this way they'll have all the bolts in there. And instead of using RTV red, now the RTV red was in there, I don't know, probably 10 years and 85,000 miles. It didn't leak, but RTV gray is usually a bit better for like differential covers and transmission covers. So I'll probably use the gray. I think I got a tube of that, but I'll probably get a new tube of it and paint the cover. But I'm going to let this drain overnight, and probably for 24 hours. I'll probably finish this up tomorrow night when it's cool out. And this way I'll get as much out of this thing as possible. Like I said, I don't like doing a transmission flush. Like, I can't do one. I don't have the equipment for it. But transmission flush, sometimes it can knock something loose, and you can get a particle or some kind of dirt, and it can get jammed up in these intricate transmissions. They were good for the old transmissions, but not these newer ones. And so the way I did it is I just used the transmission pressure. You know, it just put some new oil in the pan and just ran the transmission, put it in D, put it in reverse and drive when the car was parked, so the torque converter would pick up the fluid, and it got mixed up with the old fluid, and then I'm going to change the pan again. So I'm going to get most of it out of there, and it's a safe way to get most of the transmission fluid out of it. And you know, the rubber gaskets work, but and this transmission has a dipstick on it where you can change you can check the fluid a lot easier. I do not like using the gaskets especially on transmissions that have like the sight level thing, glass or whatever you want to call it, the sight level access hole, where you got to put the car up on all four, like on 2 pairs of ramps, put it up level, and get up under there and check it while the car is running. It's not easy to check those kind of transmissions. You don't want any leaks in the pan, and I think the RTV is pretty much fail safe. What I do is when I clean this, I clean it all with starting fluid, or lacquer thinner or something like that, brake cleaner or something, where it's like really squeaky, chemically clean. It's got no grease on it, and when you put the RTV on it, it ain't gonna go nowhere, man. It's gonna seal a lot better than a rubber gasket. And again, like I said, you can't use RTV with a rubber gasket. That was one of the reasons I like the cork gaskets, because you could use the old gasket shellac. And some people don't like cork gaskets with the gasket shellac, the old stuff the mechanics used to use. Those things didn't freaking leak. There might be a slight seepage or something, but it was really, after a long period of time, but they held up. I think they're better than the rubber gaskets in a lot of ways. It's just that you can't reuse them that easily unless they're fairly new. But the RTV is actually a better way to go. And I'm going to use the RTV gray on this time. I think it's a little bit better than the red for this particular type of application.